Welcome to another edition of Hoehmtown Happenings. I'm Supervisor George Hoehmann. Thanks for joining us. Well, Happy New Year, everybody. And 2024 will prove to be a very busy year, we believe. We've had a great year in 2023. Before we begin, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the things that took place in 2023 that we're very proud of and happy about. First and foremost, in 2023, we passed a budget with a 0% property tax increase on the town level. This is now, I think, the fourth time since I've been town supervisor that we've either cut taxes or had a flat budget with no tax increase. It's challenging to be able to do, and I want to thank all of our department heads who are working closely with my administrative team so that we could be able to come up with a 0% tax increase, which I think is very much needed in these challenging economic times. Also, we've got some changes within the town of Clarkstown, and you're going to hear later on in this program from one of our newly elected officials. So we have a brand new town council person, Mark Woods, and a brand new town clerk after very many years of folks occupying those positions. So really excited about some of the new leadership that's coming into the town of Clarkstown. And in 2023, we also completed our first turf field over at Zucker Park in New City. We opened up several new parks. We expanded the West Nyack Park. We renamed it the West Nyack Hamlet Green and Firefighter Memorial Park. There's some beautiful statues that commemorate several folks that gave their lives in service here in the town of Clarkstown. Those include statues commemorating Tom and Dan Foley and a fireman's helmet commemorating the late chief of the West Nyack Fire Department, Chief Matero, who passed away fighting a fire in 1974 in West Nyack. The beautiful new West Nyack Hamlet Green and Firefighter Memorial Park opened up in September with a formal dedication, and it's got a beautiful new walking path, and it's very quickly become, with its playground, one of the busiest parks that we have within the town of Clarkstown. In addition to that, as I said, we completed a lot of infrastructure projects within the town. We were very fortunate to add new pickleball courts with a brand new pickleball complex that we opened up in October over at Street School, behind Street School. And that's already proven to be a very good resource for the folks within the town of Clarkstown. We have a lot of folks that are availing themselves to that court. So really excited about the future. In 2024, we've got a number of infrastructure projects that will kick off. We had completed the Snake Hill Road Bridge remediation. That was a county bridge, but the town was able to secure a state grant to be able to rehab that bridge and make sure that that bridge will now be in use for the next 100 years. In addition to some of the other infrastructure projects that we've completed, we paved over 26 miles worth of roads in the town of Clarkstown last year. We've also worked on a lot of our infrastructure. We've completed some drainage projects. And in 2024, we're going to kick off a number of additional projects, including the long-awaited West Nyack Revitalization Project. We're going to be doing some additional turf fields over at Jermons Park. And we've got some additional amenities that we're going to be working on across our town facilities. In addition to that, we have some other number of important and critical issues that we're working on that have really become concerning here in the suburbs. One of which is the impact of illegal immigration, migration to the United States, and we're seeing some of the impacts of that. And to that end, we've added 2 code enforcement officers that are now in service in the town of Clarkstown to help us battle the scourge of illegal housing. Many of these houses that are illegally converted have been housing some of these newer immigrants coming to the United States. And there's certainly been a concern about public safety from that perspective. So we've got a lot going on. We've had a really good 2023, and I look forward to a lot of the projects and things that we're undertaking in 2024. We've got a great show coming up for you. As I said, our first guest is our newly elected and serving councilman in Ward 1, Mark Woods, who comes from a long background of service in the military and in law enforcement. We also have the president of the New City Chamber of Commerce, Roxanne Perrone, who's been a frequent guest on this program. And in our veteran segment, we're very fortunate to have a Marine who also serves as the SRO, School Resource Officer in the Clarkstown Police Department. He also served 2 tours of active duty in combat in Iraq as a member of the United States Marine Corps, and that's Officer Chris Woulfe. All that and more on this episode of Hoehmtown Happenings. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Our first guest is somebody who is well known to this program. He's been a guest 2 prior times, but this time he's on as our newest elected official in Clarkstown, our newly elected councilman from Ward 1, Mark Woods. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
So I know we were talking off camera, Mark. The first time you were on this program, you were the deputy director of the Veteran Service Agency in Rockland County, and then you moved on to go to Bridges, where you took over the Joseph P. Dwyer program, peer mentoring program, and we had you on in each of those roles that you were in over past seasons. But now I'm delighted that you're newly elected here in the town of Clarkstown. You represent Ward 1. So happy to have you on our program.
Well, thanks for having me again. I'm very excited about this new role. You know, it's going to be a good time.
So let's talk a little bit about your background, because folks that have may remember you from previous programs or know a little bit about you, but for the rest of the residents of Clarkstown who may not know, let's talk a little bit about your background. So you come from a background of service in the military and also in law enforcement. So maybe you could just tell our residents a little bit about your time, where you were born, and what led you into law enforcement and ultimately into the military.
So I was born in Brooklyn, born and raised in Brooklyn. That's where I stayed through high school.
What high school did you graduate from?
Bishop Ford, no longer closed, Franciscan Brothers School. I think it's no longer exists, but left Brooklyn when I went to college. I decided to go to the Citadel, which is a military college in South Carolina, which was all boys at the time. I knew I needed the focus. I needed that structure of a military school, or else I don't think I would have been successful in college. I needed that kind of, that discipline. And you don't have to go into the military coming out of there. It's different than West Point or one of the service academies, but I did. I decided I was going to go into the Army. So right after college, I went into the Army. I was an infantry officer, and I got assigned to Germany, of all places. The Army gives you a nice list. They say, give us your top 10 choices of where you'd like to be stationed. I picked Hawaii, Panama, Italy. Germany was nowhere on that list, but as the Army does, I got sent to Germany, which was interesting because the Berlin Wall had come down a few years earlier, and I got assigned to the Berlin Brigade, which was getting ready to close down. So I got to spend a year working with the community, doing parades, working with the British, and working with the French, which was always interesting to me. Somehow we didn't work with the Russians too much, even though they had a sector of the town. After Berlin closed, I moved to southern Germany with the 3rd Infantry Division, the proud company of Audie Murphy, a Medal of Honor winner, and I spent 2 years in Schweinfurt, Germany. And then right at the end of my time there, I got mobilized to go with a United Nations peacekeeping mission in the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, which was really interesting because we went from the camouflage and to white Humvees, blue helmets, with the big UN on the side, and it was really interesting. We were patrolling along the southern border of Serbia, maintaining, a lot was going on in the north with Bosnia, and we stayed in the southern portion of it. And I got to work again with some interesting countries like Denmark, Norway. They do a lot of UN missions, so I got to work with them, which was interesting. But got a little tired of the military, wanted to get out, so I left the military, ended up in Manhattan, Kansas. Don't know how I ended up there, but that's where I was, and wanted to get into law enforcement. So I became a corrections officer. I spent 1 year in Topeka, Kansas as a corrections officer, which very difficult job. I have nothing but the utmost respect for anybody who can stick with that job. It was very difficult, but it did teach me how to deal with people. That's a world where you have to learn that your mouth is their best weapon. You need to be able to diffuse uncomfortable situations amongst the inmates, and amongst the staff too. So I did that for a year, and then I was hired by, at the time, the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service. Moved down to San Antonio, Texas, and worked from everywhere from Laredo down on the southern border, Corpus Christi, up to Waco, Texas. And I spent 3 years doing immigration enforcement, basically finding people who had been admitted to the country legally or were here illegally, and then committed felonies, violent felonies, and we went to find them and bring them before the immigration court.
So, that experience is going to be probably invaluable, as we face this immigration crisis right here locally, you would think, right?
I would think, it's just, I truly don't understand what's going on the southern border, because, I understand the immigration law, I certainly studied it, and I just don't see what's going on there, and, how it's not being addressed. It just seems like the border is open now and everybody's coming in, and it worries me. It worries me as a prior law enforcement that we're not really properly vetting people coming into the country, and I hope we don't have a problem because of that.
Well, I know that we've talked a good bit during the campaign, and certainly in your first few weeks here as a councilman, about some of the immigration issues and we can get into that later on. But back to your career. So you go from INS, you eventually end up with the NYPD, correct?
Yeah, I decided, let me come home back to New York. INS doesn't let you switch. Like I said, I'd like to come to New York and do the same job in New York as a special agent, and they didn't let me do it. So I said, well, I'll join the NYPD, and basically just as a placeholder, I figured I would do a few years and then get back into the federal system. But I wound up just loving the NYPD. It really just was a perfect fit for me. I felt like I was home, and I had really charmed career. No one expected 9/11 to happen, and that certainly changed the trajectory of how my career played out. The minute that happened, the NYPD pulled me into the intelligence division to yet again do immigration work. They said, you understand the language, you understand the databases, can you come to the intelligence division and do work for us on that front? And not what I expected to do. I wanted to be, Andy, I wanted to be Sipowicz from NYPD Blue. I wanted to be a detective in the squad. But that's what they asked me to do, and I understood the need, and I did that for quite a few years. Interesting work. But then the Army called me back, out of nowhere. They said, got that letter in the mail. Well, you're coming back to the Army. So that interrupted my police career for a little bit.
And I find that portion of your career really very interesting, because you've shared some stories, and I don't know how much you'd like to share on this, but about really building democracy and working with local people and the threat to their lives and to your life as well. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
When I got reactivated, I assumed I was going to go back into the military as an infantry officer again, so that's where my mindset was. But when I got mobilized and head down to Fort Bragg, they said, no, we're going to transition to you in something called civil affairs, which I really wasn't familiar with at the time. And civil affairs is basically, it's mostly reservists. They take you from your civilian job and they say, we're going to have you apply that to the military now and teach local governments. So I wound up embedding with the mayor of a town of 100,000 people called Tal Afar. It's up in the northwest portion of Iraq. And I lived with the mayor, the police chief, and we started a town council, which was so interesting to me because they were starting from scratch. They had been used to this dictatorship under Saddam Hussein for so many years, and we basically had to teach them everything. And I'm not saying that the American way of democracy or our republic is exactly what they needed, but at least we gave them a framework through which to work with. And it was real interesting to me because I got to spend 24 hours a day with the mayor, with the police chief, and I worked with the police on certain things, and I worked with the mayor on other things. Listen, I have a degree in political science. Did not prepare me for teaching them how to run a government, but we worked through it. And the most interesting part of it is that we had no power in the town. So there was no power, there was no running water. Maybe we'd get a generator going for an hour, but it was 115 degrees. We'd be in meetings, tempers would start flaring, and we would work through issues. We had to, the hospital. How do we set up healthcare there? How do we set up all the municipalities? There was no gas stations. We had odd things you wouldn't think about. We had to build. We had funds, so we'd come up with different projects. I worked with local contractors, and we'd figure out what their needs were. And we built schools, we built hospitals. Water wells was an important one. Getting them fresh water, something that we take for granted, but it's so absolutely important.
So you move from that incredible experience, and then you come back into the NYPD. You end up working in human trafficking as well, correct, with the Joint Terrorism Task Force?
Well, I did. What happened is when I came back, I didn't want to be in the intelligence division anymore. I wanted to do something a little different, so I went into vice enforcement, which is alcohol, tobacco, untaxed cigarettes, prostitution, and I started specializing in human trafficking. The New York City did not have a law, or the state didn't really have a trafficking law, so I got to work with the FBI, the federal government, because they have a very strict trafficking law. That has since changed. But I started working and quickly became my specialization, working with underage children who were being trafficked in and around New York. It was called the Crimes Against Children Task Force, and it was fascinating work. I did it for about 7 years. Some of the cases took me here right to Rockland County, and I said, it's right under our noses here, whether it be this hotel or that hotel, and we don't even see it, but it goes on. So
just a fascinating career. That leads you into, eventually you leave, you go into, as we talked about, and it's been covered in previous episodes, as I said, you eventually start working with the county as the deputy director of the Veteran Service Agency. You're there for a number of years. You move from there to Bridges, which is a not-for-profit that does such great work, and you run the Joseph P. Dwyer Peer Mentoring Program. What got you into thinking about running for public office, town council?
It had never been something that even had occurred to me, but it is. I've spent my entire life in service, and I saw that there was a need. I saw the election was coming up, and I didn't really see that we had a viable candidate. I thought that it would be a logical next step in my career. Everything that I have been doing for the last 5 years in the veteran space, you could take veteran out of that, and it applies to the town as a whole, whether it's dealing with a homeless issue or a job. So I thought it would be it would be a good transition for me. I think I could do a lot of good with the town, so I figured I would throw my hat into the ring, and if the people wanted me, I would do the job, and if they didn't, I'd go back to what I was doing.
So we're delighted to have you as our newest councilman. We're pretty much out of time, but what do you hope? Maybe you could sum up. What are you hoping really to accomplish as a councilman right now?
I spent the last 9 months talking to the people of Clarkstown and seeing what they want. It's not so much what I want, it's what they want. And I really, truly believe that. And, what they want is kind of what we all want. We want safety. We want our children to be, to grow up in a place that they feel safe. We want to keep taxes down. It's as you will well know, I'll talk to 5 people that say we'd like sidewalks, and then the next 5 say we don't want sidewalks. But one thing I really like to accomplish is, being that I work in the nonprofit world with people with disabilities, I'd really like to see a universal playground here in Clarkstown, so that everybody with different abilities will be able to use it. I know we don't have one, and you and I have discussed it, and I think that would be a nice first step.
Great. Looking forward to working with you, Mark, over this next term. Congratulations on your victory in Ward 1, and I know you're going to continue to do great things as you've done throughout your entire career.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Email from school about the incident today.
Scary.
Teachers like me, parents, we don't always know as much as you guys do about what's going on with other kids.
Half the time, it's rumors.
Yeah, but if you're ever concerned about a friend who's having trouble with alcohol, prescription drugs, anything, you need to tell an adult, someone you know and trust. That can be hard, but speaking up about a problem is what helping a friend is all about.
Welcome back. My next guest is Roxanne Perrone, the longtime president of the New City Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Roxanne.
Hi, George. Nice to see you.
So really delighted to have you on. You've been a frequent guest. The Chamber is really a part of the bedrock of the Clarkstown community, and looking forward to have a little bit of a conversation about the Chamber, a little bit about the history of the Chamber and some of the things that you do and some of the things that you're planning on doing this coming year. So before we get to that, just very briefly, just give us a little thumbnail sketch. I mean, you're a local girl, made good, basically, right?
Yes, I'm here since I'm 10 years old. Grew up in Clarkstown in New City and raised my family here as well.
Right, and you had a business. You had a business for many years right here on Maple Avenue as well, right?
Yes, I had a deli. It was fabulous. Kept in touch with all of my old friends from the neighborhood, and just fostered a lot of good relationships.
Right, and currently you're now working in the emergency management office up in the fire training center, right?
Yeah, it's a different hat for sure, but I work for Fire and Emergency Services. Responsible, or my title is Fire and Emergency Services Specialist, and yeah, we make sure great many things, but more importantly, my responsibility is the commercial fire alarm protection end of it.
Good. So you bring a lot of experience, but let's pivot to the Chamber, right? You've been a frequent guest here. You and as well as other folks in the Chamber in the past, Alice as well. So you're currently the president of the Chamber, tell us a little bit about the New City Chamber. It's been around for a good period of time now.
Yeah, I joined the Chamber when I first opened up the deli in 2009, and immediately as an executive board member, they needed somebody as the secretary, and then I jump-started and have remained the president since. It's grown exponentially. I think its first inception was in the late 70s, but a lot has changed over the years, especially in the last 15 years that I've been an integral part of it. We recently elected Amory Jameson from Elite Repeat as our vice president, and Alice Lena from New City Bowl and Batting Cages remains to be our treasurer. She's wonderful at it, yeah.
That's great, and so you've got a nice, nice board of folks, and rough. How did 2023 go for the Chamber?
In my opinion, and I think it's the pervasive thought for our members and our executive board, that we had a banner year. We hosted 2 fabulous street fairs that were exceedingly well attended, a tremendous amount of foot traffic. The vendors did very well both days. We had a lot of different things for kids, young and old, to do. We hosted several other events. We showcased new members as well as other networking events at those establishments that belong to our chamber body. So I think we had a great year.
And one of the things that you did mention, but I attended, which I thought was just fabulous, you had a joint networking event with a number of the chambers over at the saloon in Pearl River up on the rooftop bar, which I thought was just absolutely fabulous.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that event? And are there going to be future plans for future events such as that?
Yes, we decided, the chamber presidents or representatives of the chambers, the various chambers in the county, formed a joint chamber alliance group. We meet via Zoom at least once a month. And we discuss having certain events and individually what's going on, but also what we could do collaboratively. And the Pearl River Saloon was one of the events. We then subsequently had 2 others, one that was located at Black Parakeets in Nyack. Terry Clark is the president of the Nyack Chamber, and we had an event there which was well attended. And we also had one at Bailey Smokehouse right here in New City. Right. So that was 2023, and we look forward to doing much of the same in 2024.
And so, in addition to the New City Chamber, you have the
Nanuet, North Rockland, Pearl River, Nyack, and Suffern.
And it's great. And these are, the Chambers of Commerce are basically local business folks that are kind of banding together to try and promote each other and build community as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that is definitely the driving force. We want to increase commerce and foot traffic to the businesses that belong to our chambers. And our focus, thankfully enough, is not just self-serving for our own individual chambers, but it's for everybody.
Right.
We just want to see, growth in commerce in the county.
And we've got such a wonderful partnership. My administration with the chambers, but particularly the New City Chamber, we meet basically on a monthly basis. We'll talk more frequently if need be. And we partner on a number of events. And some of the events we partner on are the street fairs. Could you talk about those?
Yes. So I've always said, and it's really how we feel, that our partnership and our efforts with the town of Clarkstown is of paramount importance, and it's really greatly valued on our behalf. I think that people in the community see that relationship and value it as well, which makes our street fairs even that much more successful. So when we do make the reach out to vendors or to entertainment, for example, that want to come into, that we want to see at our street fairs, I always start out with saying, we're New City, yes, we partner with the town of Clarkstown. George is phenomenal. His team is equally as invested. They value us. We want to throw a wonderful street fair. So please jump on board.
So how many folks would be businesses or booths would you have at a typical street fair?
This past street fair, we had 100, if I'm recalling correctly, approximately 127 vendors. Now, there's a lot that depends on the actual turnout of the day, weather being of most important. But things happen, and sometimes we will see those open spaces on our street, but they're quickly filled up because we do have a wait list, and we do have people signing in at the last minute. So, yeah.
But out of those 120, it'll be folks that you wouldn't normally get. They're coming into the area.
Correct.
It could be people that are selling different crafts. They're alcohol vendors.
Yes.
You name it, right?
Yes, absolutely. There's a wide variety. I mean, there's our local businesses that participate. There are businesses that are from other chambers, other areas in the county that participate. And there are a lot of vendors, arts and crafts vendors, that come from wherever, that this is what they do that's their living, right? To go from one street fair to the next. But they do enjoy, we've turned the tide, they do enjoy coming to New City because they do well here.
Yeah. And so this coming year, 2024, we have two street fairs. If I understand correctly, it's June 9th?
June 9th.
Which is a Sunday?
Yes, and Sunday, October 6th.
So that's great. So literally, we have two dates already all set, and we'll have at least 120 vendors that'll be coming to those. What are some of the other things that the chamber undertakes, and how people can learn about it?
They could always be in touch with me via our chamber email address, which is info@newcitychamber.com. A lot of people have my personal contact information, which they feel free to contact me at any point as well. And we're having our annual holiday party actually on Friday, January the 19th, at which point anybody, and we have about 100 people attending that event, which is fantastic. They will receive a list of our chamber members. We encourage frequent these businesses, help each other out, think about the mantra that we always spread, think local, shop local, dine local.
Right.
And look on our website, as well as I'm sure that you help promote for us as well, our various events that we have set up this coming year. For example, we have our psychic medium coming back, Lisa Morrison, at Michael's on Main.
What date is that?
Monday, March 18th.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had her twice last year, both sold out events, both what we hit capacity at 55 attendees, and it's just a wonderful event.
Yeah.
So
I've heard great things about. I've never made it, but I've heard great things about. People rave about it.
you have to come. You might be one of the only token males at the event, but
Well,
anyway.
can she help me with some football tips?
I wish.
It'll be after
that
the Super Bowl.
right,
but,
and
you know,
lotto numbers,
lotto
right?
numbers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I just want 6 numbers. That's it. Okay.
That's
We're
it?
good. That's it. Just
Not a heavy ask,
not a
George.
heavy,
No,
not
no,
a
no.
heavy lift.
No.
If she can get it from the other side, I'm fine with it.
You got it.
I wouldn't consider it cheating.
Right, exactly. There's no insight or anything with that.
You also have you have your monthly mixers basically too, right?
Yes.
So and those rotate around businesses in New City.
Yeah, the last mixer that we had, I'm not quite sure the date. I want to say it was right before Thanksgiving. Was from one of our newer members, QA. It's an advertising and media company. And they came, they presented at River Court, big friendly of ours, long-standing chamber member. And we had quite a good attendance there. And they present about what their business platform is all about, how it could help better serve all of our businesses in the community, big or small. And yeah, it was fabulous. So we try to host events like that. Yeah, and I would imagine that right after the Lisa Morrison event in March, that will roll through a pretty decent schedule for the remainder of the year.
Right. Well, so and if folks want to learn more about the chamber, they can go onto the chamber website.
Yes.
And could you give that address again?
www.newcitychamber.com or email us at info@newcitychamber.com.
You know, I want to close with this. We're about out of time, but you know, throughout the pandemic, our chambers were essential to us being able to reach, and we did a lot of work. Jeff Gillies through my office, the Economic Development Platform, and my office, and we hosted forums. And when you go back and you look at the amount of PPP money that was distributed to support businesses, Clarkstown absolutely led the way amongst all county businesses, and that was really credit to the efforts of the folks in the chamber working with the town of Clarkstown hand in glove. So it's the New City Chamber and our chamber, Nanuet Chambers. Our chambers are a gem, and they're really a wonderful resource within the community that people need to really be more aware of and take advantage of.
Yeah.
Whether you're in a business or whether you're just somebody that wants to get involved within the community, the chamber is a great place to start. So we encourage everybody, go check out their website. If you could give that again.
www.newcitychamber.com, and again, they can email at info@newcitychamber.
Well, Roxanne, thank you for your friendship, but more importantly,
Thank you so much.
thank you for your leadership with the chamber and within the business community. You've done untold good for our local businesses and residents. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, George. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
In every family, small conversations can make a big impact. I grew up on tour with my parents. Kind of different, but we bonded over music and we talked. Honest conversations, like when my dad shared his experiences as an alcoholic. Your honesty gave me a sense of integrity that I wanted in my own life.
And I wanted you to know, from someone who's been in recovery more than 30 years now, that hard work is what creates success, not alcohol or other drugs, in whatever you do.
Talk, they hear you.
Welcome back. My final guest is Chris Woulfe, a veteran and an officer in the Clarkstown Police Department. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
So delighted to have you here, and thank you first for your service in law enforcement and for the people of the town of Clarkstown. So you're on our veterans segment, and we want to focus a little bit on your service. We always want to honor our vets. I think we've done over 80 shows here in the town of Clarkstown, and we've always have a veteran segment. So thank you for agreeing to allow us to speak about your service. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you were born and raised?
I was actually born and raised up in Orange County. My father was a Round Poe detective. My mother was a nurse at Nyack Hospital. You can imagine how they met. And yeah, I was born and raised up there.
And then where'd you graduate from high school?
Pine Bush High School.
Pine Bush? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so far up. I have relatives that live in Pine Bush, and their kids go there as well.
Yeah, it's a nice school.
Yeah, great school.
Yeah.
And I think one of our former officers actually is the SRO up there as well.
Shannon.
Yeah,
Kevin Shannon. Yes.
Yeah, Kevin Shannon.
Yeah.
He was a DARE officer and SRO for years here.
Yep.
Let's get back into your career. So after you're born, you're raised, you graduated from Pine Bush High School. What'd you end up doing?
I joined the Marine Corps
Okay.
shortly after graduating high school.
And how long did you serve in the Marines?
4 years.
So could you tell us a little bit about your service? I mean, start to finish. Where you went to Paris Island, I guess?
I did do Paris Island, yep. The East Coast guys go to Paris Island, West Coast goes to California. But in 2002, November 2002, I joined, went to Paris Island for 3 months. I was an infantryman, was my MOS. And then shortly after that, and the follow-up infantry training, I went to 2nd Battalion, 2nd Marines in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina,
Right.
where I was there with them until 2006 when I got out.
And obviously, this is right after 9/11, and so war efforts are ramping up in both Afghanistan and Iraq, and you ended up being serving in Iraq as well, correct?
I did. At that time in 2002, 2006 it was pretty busy time
Right.
over there. The operation tempo was nonstop. It was either training or deploying for 4 years.
So could you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like? You did multiple tours in Iraq?
I did 2 tours. Yeah.
2 tours?
Yeah.
How long were each tour, a year? Or?
No, not quite a year. The Marine Corps does about 7 to 8 month deployments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So both were about the same. Yeah, about 8 months.
All right, so did you do that right after basic or, after Camp Lejeune?
No, it was about a year after. So when I got to my unit, they were just getting back from a deployment to Iraq. So then we had about almost a year workup, probably 10-month workup of retraining, because you get new guys. Some guys leave, some guys come in, so you're retraining for another 9 months. Then we deployed again.
So roughly when did you go to Iraq for your first tour?
2004.
2004?
Rough, yeah.
And that was a pretty intense time in 2004.
It was, yeah, it was.
What part of Iraq did you serve on?
We were actually what's called the Triangle of Death. We were in Mahmudiyah, Iraq, which is just south of Baghdad. And it was Mahmudiyah, Yusufiyah, and Ludafiyah created this. Somebody coined it the Triangle of Death, and that's where our first deployment was.
Right. Did you lose guys in your unit?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it must be obviously very, very difficult, and we honor their service as well. But maybe can you tell us a little bit about that experience, serving in combat over in that area? What were some of the roles that you had to undertake? You were an infantryman?
I was an infantryman. I was the radio operator for the first deployment. Each deployment was different, the 2. So we went in 2004, and then from 2005 into 2006. And I guess you could say the war efforts had changed at that point, and our mission had changed. There was a lot more combat the first deployment. The second deployment, the rules of engagement had changed a bit, and we weren't so free, which kind of handcuffed us. But it was a busy time, yeah.
Right, and so obviously serving over there for two tours. Then you're coming to the end of your Marine Corps active duty experience. What'd you do after that?
I actually joined the NYPD from the Marine Corps. I was getting out in the fall of 2006, and they had a job fair on base, and I didn't know what I was going to do, so I went to the job fair and started talking to some city cops, and they had a test that night. And I grew up around law enforcement. Like I said, my father was on the job, and so I took the test, and I did well on it, and they wanted to hire me then, a month or 2 later, but I still had 6 months left in my contract, so I deferred, and then I went when I got out.
Right. And where were you assigned in the NYPD initially?
In the 4A precinct in the Bronx.
Okay.
Yeah, I spent majority of my time in the Bronx area.
Right. And then luckily for us, you're with the NYPD for how many years? 7 years, you said?
7 years, yep.
7 years. So luckily for us, you're with the NYPD for 7 years. How'd you end up in Clarkstown?
The commute from upstate was too far, so I moved to Clarkstown. And then somebody told me the test was coming up, and figured it'd be a better job than the city job, so I took the test and did well on it and got hired.
That's great. And you've now been here in Clarkstown for just about 10 years?
Yeah.
What are some of the assignments you've had here? We're going to get to your current assignment now, but some of the assignments you had here first.
I was patrol like everybody else. You start off in patrol, and then I remember the drone team, and then that's kind of it. It was patrol for almost 10 years, and with the side gig of the drone unit.
Just as an aside, what would be like one of the most interesting calls you were ever on in the NYPD and here in Clarkstown as well?
The most interesting calls? Anything that's kind of complex, where it's not so cut and dry. I can't think of one off the top of my head. So working New Year's Eve in the city was a pretty wild task.
That was almost like the triangle of death.
Yeah. But it was like they say, it's what front row ticket to the greatest show on earth, they say. But it is kind of cool to be able to walk around Times Square on New Year's Eve with free reign, as if you get anywhere you want. It's kind of cool.
No, that must have been neat. Fortunately for us, there was an opening as a school resource officer. So maybe you could talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, that was great timing on that part. That spot opened up, but that's been a lot of fun, and it's kind of reinvigorated my career, if you will. It's patrol kind of wears you out, and 16 years on the road, and then to get to go to a school where everybody's happy and they're having fun, and it's a different environment, and it's fun to see the impression you can make on young minds there.
So tell our listeners the school that you're assigned to.
I'm at Clarkstown North High School.
And so Chris, tell us a little bit about, like, what does a school resource officer actually do?
They do a lot. I guess the most important part is in today's climate is the security, the response to any threats or anything like that. But it's more than that. It's building rapport with the kids and kind of bridging the gap between today's youth and law enforcement. It's advising. It's a liaison between the police department and the school district itself. We deal with the principals a lot, the assistant principals. They can reach out to us and kind of bounce legal questions off us that they might not want to expose a child to or something like that. They want to teach the kids that we're not here to hurt them. We're here to help them.
Right. And you're also, obviously, I'll go to football games and sporting events. You become part of the fabric of the school. Correct?
You do. You really do. You see them off duty. You see the students, and they recognize you out of the uniform, and you meet their parents, and they it's a good feeling. Yeah.
Wow. So you've had really a great career. I mean, when you think about it, obviously your military service, 4 years, in the Marines. Did you maintain a reserve status with them afterwards, or
just the inactive reserves? So I didn't actually do the reserves as you know it, but you had to do 4 years afterwards of inactive, where you're essentially on call. You could be called back, and I was called back about a year after I got out. I had to go down to St. Louis, Missouri, for processing, but because of my status as a law enforcement officer, first responders in general, law enforcement, fire departments, anything like that, they're kind of exempt from it because you're taken from the community. But some guys did get called back and had to go back and deploy again.
Wow. And for guys from your unit that you know?
Yeah.
Wow. Are you keeping in touch with any of the guys from your unit?
I do. The ones I was close with, I do, yeah.
Any of them local?
Not too local. Pennsylvania is probably the closest, but Rhode Island I'm close with. Nothing really, not too much here, around here.
So obviously we are delighted that we have somebody of your caliber in the Clarkstown Police Department. I think it's good for our residents to hear that as well. Combat veteran, loads of police, law enforcement experience, NYPD. I mean, typically we'll have officers that will hire after 1, 2, or 3 years in the NYPD. So you had 7 years down there, so you saw a lot down there, and you brought that experience here. Then 10 years on the road, and now you're really helping as part of the educational team from a law enforcement perspective, representing the police department in the town, for our high school students. And that's really a whole different twist on your career, and you bring a whole lot of experience with that. So I'm grateful, with the relationship that we have with our school district, the Clarkstown Central School District. We have 4 districts. We've got great relationships with all 4, but the Clarkstown Central School District is wholly contained within our town. The other 3 districts, East Ramapo, Nanuet, and Nyack, have varying amounts of students within the town. In fact, Nanuet and Nyack, the majority of their students are from our town, but they cross town boundaries. But Clarkstown is wholly contained within our town.
Right.
And part of the great working relationship is a relationship with the police department as well. And you're kind of, if you will, the tip of the spear for that with the town. So Chris, thank you for your service, and thank you for being such a wonderful guest.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Email from school about the incident today.
Scary.
Teachers like me, parents, we don't always know as much as you guys do about what's going on with other kids.
Half the time, it's rumors.
Yeah, but if you're ever concerned about a friend who's having trouble with alcohol, prescription drugs, anything, you need to tell an adult, someone you know and trust. That can be hard, but speaking up about a problem is what helping a friend is all about.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank my guest, Councilman Mark Woods, Roxanne Perrone, the president of the New City Chamber of Commerce, and in our veteran segment, police officer and Marine Corps veteran, Chris Woulfe. Until next time, I'm Supervisor George Hoehmtown. Thanks for joining us.